On this episode of Industry Relations, Rob and I discuss what really has changed in the MLS industry. Let's go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Industry Relations with your host, co-host. This is Rob Hahn, the Notorious Rob, and as always, the fabulous Greg Robertson. Woo!
Hola, Rob.
Today's hat day for anybody watching us on YouTube. A hat and t-shirt day, because
that's right. Yeah.
And appropriately, we are wearing red and blue. I'm just pointing that out.
Well, the funny thing is I'm not sure people are going to hear this, but I live in Huntington Beach. We have something we call the Pacific Air Show every year. So it's an air show that's on Huntington Beach. Mm-hmm. And so the Jets are doing practice runs today.
Oh, nice.
Was it practice runs today? No, it's actually the air show started today.
Oh, okay.
So it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it's a little overcast. Hopefully, I'm going tomorrow. I'm taking my boat out with some friends, and we're going to watch the air show from the water.
Yeah.
But if you hear, I don't know if you can, my mic is isolating enough that you won't hear it, but I might freak out a little bit because they're going right over my house.
Yeah. And hopefully it's not military jets, just doing zooming, there's no Maverick
they're
action.
It's they're the Thunderbirds are here.
Oh, nice.
A lot of the big ones here. So it's
very
really
cool.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we decided, we're chatting. By the time this episode gets published, I think CMLS will be over. And you and I have been going to CMLS for that event for a long time, like a real long time.
Before it was CMLS in my case, yeah.
And I have a lot to be grateful for to CMLS specifically, because that's how I met Sunny. That's how I met my wife.
Oh, that's great.
It was 2016 CMLS. It was she was at the Realtor.com conference. It's tail end. So their last day and our first day kind of overlapped. So, I was in town early. I called up friends at Realtors, like, hey, what you guys doing? Like, we're having a party. Come by. I went by. I met this pretty young thing. And the rest is history. So a lot to be grateful for. And I know that the content this year is going to be amazing, because I know who was has been very hard at work on the content. But
Sunny.
Yeah. But, because there's something else I'm working on, I went back and I found a video of my presentation in Las Vegas in 2016, CMLS. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't think anything's changed, from that presentation.
Oh, really? Interesting.
So because that was the presentation where I sort of really talked about there are too many MLSs, you're too small, right? And you're too poor. You need to divorce the association, governance changes. I went through a lot of that stuff, which was, super controversial. It was a hot, I think I opened that presentation by saying I might be announcing my retirement after this presentation is just ended because I may not be getting hired by anybody. And it's this is back when upstream was much in the news and, all this stuff. And I'm like, have things changed?
Well, I mean, let's just take the two things you talked about, right? You just highlighted, right? I mean, so too many MLSs. I mean, there is certainly since 2017 a lot less MLSs than there was. That was just sorry. You're probably not hearing it, but it's scaring the shit out of me. There's too many MLSs. I mean, there's a lot less MLSs. A lot. I mean, whatever, but. There are certainly fewer MLSs out there for sure.
I guess.
Well, 2017. I mean,
there was 800. There were 800 when I gave that speech. Now there's
523. I mean, that's what you're saying. That's not a lot.
What's that
percentage wise, right? I mean, let's just say.
I get it, Greg. My statement was there are too many MLSs.
Okay, so wouldn't you say progress is reducing that number by, say 35%?
Sure. I'm just asking you, do you agree with that statement? There are too many MLSs.
I believe that. Oh, absolutely. There's too many
Okay,
MLSs.
so that
Yes.
no progress has been made, sure, but
Yeah,
still,
but you were saying nothing has changed, right? And I'm saying I think that's demonstrably incorrect.
sure, I guess this is it must be because you're like a Biden fan. Like the rate of growth of inflation has come down. So yay. It's like, yeah, but prices have doubled. So I guess it's slightly lower. You know,
Listen,
like
I'm a just so you know, I'm a registered independent. Okay, so that's where I fall on this whole thing, right? So,
so no, I get you. Look, progress has been made, but there's still too many MLSs.
yeah, okay.
And
So
they're too poor and they're too small. I don't think that's changed fundamentally. It's just like, look, CRMLS has grown since 2016. Bright MLS has grown since 2016. They're still too small, right? Still too small. I mean,
no. I mean, I again, I like I might be. What do they say? Picking pepper out of fly shit, but
and I'm not
yeah.
disagreeing. Like progress has been made. I'm just so fine. It's not nothing has changed, but I'm saying fundamentally. And so it was. Here's what I wanted to do. I thought, let's do a preview of CMLS because I think you're going. I won't be because I actually have to go to a different event.
Well, but, there. I mean, this will be airing after it, right?
So, I know, but I'm saying we're gonna preview, and we'll see how much of our predictions come true. Okay. Maybe that's the way to think about it. Because the difference, and I was thinking about, okay, so 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, like all the CMLSs we've been to, and all the topics that we sort of talk about year after year after year, and not a whole lot changing. This year, it might be different because of the lawsuits, right? There's already been a couple, which we've talked about in previous episodes, like Bright and MRED both saying, we're going to go to zero now, right? 0% is allowed. And NAR doing this.
Buyer's compensation is now displayed on public-facing websites, right?
Sure. Things like that. So
compensation.
Like maybe this is the year we see some real fundamental change. I kind of doubt it, but so it's sort of a retrospective, but more of a preview, right? Like, what do you think will come out of this conference that might be different than previous years? Let's start with there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's less MLSs now than last year. I think that progress still happens, but I think, as I've talked about in other conversations, I think the bottom 400 MLSs need to go away. And what is the best way of doing that? And there's issues of tribalism and also protectionism all through there that you've got to figure out. But I think that should be something. But we're making progress there. I think on the issue of transparency in regards to compensation, I think our hands may have been forced on this by the DOJ and these lawsuits, but we have definitely seen some progress happening there, and I think that's a good thing. And I think that's going to only accelerate with these lawsuits that will, as I say, probably be settled in the next 3 or 4 weeks. I know, everybody wants to split hairs and say, well, I think what I'm hearing now is people are saying they think that the franchisor lawsuits will be settled, but NAR is still going to be a stickler and go to trial, so. Right? Yeah. That's I think the consensus I'm hearing out there. I still think that NAR is going to settle as well, but we'll see what happens there. I think in the fact of like, again, we may have been forced there. Maybe there's going to be another level of professionalism. I mean, there's other things that are going on in the industry as far as
out of CMLS.
Well, I mean, there MLS is there, right? I mean, and there's always been issues with leadership, and
right.
I think some of these things that are coming out of NAR can give, association execs and MLS execs a little bit more time to kind of look towards inward to see, okay, do we have some of the similar problems that are happening other places, right? Same thing with like SDAR. I mean, you brought it up, right? I mean, everybody's got to look at maybe, you know, every aspect of their business, financial, otherwise, right? I mean, all these things that are being brought up nationally, I think, focus everybody to kind of hopefully look at themselves and how they're doing things.
Hmm.
I still think, things are changing so fast. Back in 2017, it may not have been like even comprehensible that a vendor would become their largest participant in an MLS, or a participant like the Showing Time and Zillow thing.
Hmm.
And I think there's some stuff that the industry has to figure out about what's the best way to handle that. Now that vendors are brokers, right?
Right.
You've seen a lot of change in how technology is deployed. There used to be just a handful of MLSs that rolled their own, so to speak, that had their own kind of MLS system. And now MLSs are becoming software companies and creating their own products within. And that's something you haven't seen before. I mean, and think about it this way. I mean, if you look at, 2017 and now, we got out of the GFC, right? We had a contentious election, right? Then you have what we've gone through as far as the pandemic,
Right.
and the housing crisis, and now the quickest, most accelerated time of interest rates going up and everywhere. That's forcing a lot of changes too. I mean, I happen to think, I mean, these executives that have gone through all these different things, it's just, holy mackerel, right? I mean, what they've had to gone through, it's hard to come out there without some sort of like what do they call it? Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Sure. A little bit.
In everything that's happened.
So let me ask you about this, because this
Yeah.
is one of the key things. Again, I just look at it as CMLS where the MLSs gather, right? Back in 2016, this was one of my key statements, right? That the MLS and the association have to get divorced, right? For mutual benefit. That I really thought then, and I still think, that the MLS and the association are stuck in this dysfunctional codependent relationship where they're really not good for each other, and yet they can't let go, right, of each other. And a lot of it, I think, is just the association's fear of like they're going to lose so much money and all this stuff, right? Okay. So I said that in 2016. And you know what? Most of the people in the audience back in 2016 were kind of nodding their heads like there's a lot of truth to that. Nothing has really happened since then. Is this the year when we finally see the MLS executives and their board members sitting in that ballroom go, it's time. We need to do this. And the reason I bring that up is because like we talked about last week when we were talking about the Remax settlement, I'm fairly convinced that the settlements with the franchisors will include a provision where the franchisors will no longer require that their agents and brokers be realtors. So is that kind of forced into it, is that kind of the impetus where now could you see the people in the audience next week at CMLS saying, it's time, we need to get divorced? What do you think?
I think you're seeing cracks start to happen. You mentioned one of them where Bright, right, broke ranks in a sense and
Sure.
said we're gonna make it zero, right? We're not gonna make it a penny or a dollar or whatever it was before. And then you saw NAR support that in some weird fashion, right?
Yeah.
A little bit as we talked about before,
Yeah.
like revisionist history there.
Yeah.
You're seeing,
But that's not yet quite the same thing.
Okay,
right?
but then let's bring it on. I've heard, and these are just rumors, right? So and these could be these are definitely unconfirmed, but that state associations have been looking into this and have been kind of slapped on the wrist by NAR, like don't even think about like trying to kind of break apart from us, right? Because of
Right.
A, B, C, and D, right? So you're starting to see cracks there where people never thought that could happen. You're starting to see like cracks in that kind of system to make it happen. And that's all everybody needs to do is like, once somebody does something, it gives almost everybody else permission to look at that a little differently. It's like the the kind of 4-minute mile. Once somebody breaks,
Sure.
there's a mental thing that says, okay, well, I guess let's try this. Let's try that.
I think I hear the Jets now. I mean, again, it's about decisions, right? I mean, we've been talking about this, like I said, since 2016, right? But no one's yet taken that step. At the same time, you can't help but look at Northwest MLS. You can't help but look at MLS PIN. You know, that they just reached a settlement, $3 million, and they're out. But they could be like, hey, you know what? Here's how we're going to change the rules and settle with the plaintiffs because we control our rules. Whereas Bright, like you're right. I mean, they've made steps. You know, went from $1 to 0. Like, I guess. In order for them to do that, though, they kind of had to get permission from NAR. So Bright does not control its own rules, not to the extent that, you know, Northwest MLS or MLS PIN does.
Well,
Speaking of complete rumors, right? Like unsubstantiated rumors, I heard a rumor that a major national brokerage is going to no longer require, it's going to actually pull out of NAR, and none of its agents will be realtors going forward. I've heard that rumor. Total unspeculated, unconfirmed speculation.
Well, I can see that they don't have to, they would say they don't require it, but I can't see how they would tell an independent agent of what association they could join or not.
Because I think in order to be a realtor, unless I'm wrong, your principal broker has to be a realtor, right?
Right.
Maybe not.
That's a little arcane. Maybe not. I don't know.
It used to be where the only realtor member was the principal broker, and an agent was never a realtor. They were like an associate realtor. They were like an associate member. It used to be that way. They changed that, so I don't know. Like if your brokerage that you're with is not a realtor, can you become a realtor? I'm not sure. I don't know the answer. But my point is that it's just a general trend.
Well,
right?
Okay, so let me go back to
year.
Okay, that's yeah. Let me go back to, let me again press back on the original premise. Like nothing's changed, and I know you're walking that back a bit, but like in 2017, and this, I think what's the change that I'm going to mention here that I think you'll agree with me is actually this would be the Gibraltar or the thing that's cracking that might make all these other things happen. Would you ever expect? And this I think is a huge change, right?
Okay.
In 2017, that the actual value proposition of an MLS, compensation and cooperation, was going to fundamentally break apart. Right? I don't think anybody would have made that bet, right? You didn't certainly, I mean, as you know, you're good at like predicting and you're also good at like finding different things. Nobody was talking about that crazy. What are you talking about? Blowing apart the foundation of an MLS of cooperation and compensation. Mm-hmm. That is happening right before our eyes. And that's why I think maybe some of the things you talked about and other people talked about, because that breaks apart, that I think might be a fundamental shift where some of these other things might happen. You say divorce the association. That's your point of view. There might be somebody in the association or MLS world that says, well, Rob, I mean, I think it's actually a good thing that that we're together, right? So, I mean, that's just one of your things, but,
it's just that they're
wrong. I mean, I love you. I so love you. But no, I mean, so think about that. I mean, you're saying nothing's changed, but I mean, that's a fucking huge change, right? I guess. Oh, well, just to break apart of the whole value proposition of an MLS. Sure. That's, well, maybe not.
Greg, I mean, of course it is, but I think that's kind of the point in a way, which is that nothing changes unless it's forced on us.
Yeah, but I mean, that's who wants to fucking change, man? That's how everything happens, right? I mean, a lot of, listen, the people.
I got news for you. There are industries that change from within because it's better.
Do you think, are those granted, okay. Is that the norm?
I kind of do.
No,
yes.
No, it's not the norm. Change, I think, happens because a competitor has a better product.
Right, but that's
this person does that, and
Tesla comes out with electric vehicles, all the other competitors go, hey, we need to start looking at this.
Well, but again, that's making my point, right?
No, it's not.
Hold on. Yes, it is, because the auto industry was forced to come up with that. They didn't come up with their own. We should do electric vehicles. They were forced to because they had competition.
It's not like there was a big giant lawsuit against internal combustion engines, and then they said, "Oh, we better have some EVs."
I mean, I'm not saying everything's a lawsuit. I mean, but it's been affected by something else.
Point is, the electric vehicle thing come from within the industry. It wasn't because of a lawsuit or a DOJ action that they changed.
No, it was because of competition.
That's right. And
so
real estate,
you were saying that it comes with
what has happened. What has happened within the real estate industry?
Yeah.
Within the MLS industry.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying most of these things that change that happens usually is brought because of an outside entity. Not that the president of Ford goes, you know what? We should start making electric cars. No, everybody wants to do what they're continuing doing, what they're good at, until they're forced. Because there's another competitor that comes on that does it better and is eating up at their market share, right? It's not because it's
right. And you don't see the difference between internal competition and external lawsuits and government action.
I do see the difference, but they're still in the category of something outside of something.
But how is it outside if it's internal competition?
Well, what's internal about Ford and Tesla?
Tesla's a car company.
But
it's inside the auto industry.
Inside the auto industry.
Is it not in the auto industry?
Yeah, but I mean, it's not, the way you phrased it was that Ford would be internally make change. No, that did not happen. Right. If you want to say, put a big umbrella on it.
Internal's the industry. I'm saying within the industry. Right. It came from within the industry because the things are better. Hey, you know what? And so I guess a way to think about it is this.
I don't even think that. I mean, to me, Elon was fucking he wasn't part of the industry. He came from the outside and came into the industry and forced that change. Now, if you were to say, take like Tesla out and Toyota started making electric cars, I would agree with you, but that did not happen. Some outside force came in and forced them to change.
Toyota did kind of do it, right? Because Toyota's the pioneer of the hybrid.
Yeah, but not to the level what's going on now.
Not to the level of Tesla, but they did invent the hybrid engine, and then others started doing hybrids as well, right?
I think we both made our points.
Yeah, except your point's wrong, right? So
look, we'll let the listeners decide.
Sure. I mean, so my point simply is, okay, so is this fine? We'll go with it, right? We'll go with your formulation, right? My point is, okay, is this the year when the men and women gathering in New Orleans will finally go, it's time. We need to divorce the association.
Well, right. So just keep in mind, that's your opinion of what's broken. Right. That might not be what their opinion of what's broken.
But they're wrong. I think you and I agree on this. They're wrong. Right? Most of the problems with the MLS comes from the fact that it's realtor association owned and governed.
Well, some are, yeah.
What do you mean some are?
Well, there's, FMLS.
And FMLS doesn't have the problems of a standard normal MLS. They just don't.
I mean, you're saying all. I mean, there's some MLS models that they're not owned by an association, right? Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And they have their own separate, unique problems. But those are infinitely superior, right? Like if you had to pick a model, is an FMLS or Northwest or MLS Pin significantly better than Bright or CRMLS or whatever? Even MRED, which is broker governed, in some weird way? Of course it is.
I like FMLS's model for sure. Yeah.
Right. So I'm just saying, and they've known this, right? It's not like this is a secret. FMLS has been around for 70 years, right? And it's been the envy of like brokers everywhere. It's not like people didn't know this. It's just they did not and could not do anything about it.
And yet, Gamels is another well-run MLS that does very well. How do you account for that?
Competition is great, I guess. Right? I don't know. So here's the thing. I'm just pointing out that all right, maybe not. Maybe you're right. Maybe there are a bunch of MLS execs who are like, no, it's wonderful that we're with the Realtor Association. It's great that our board of directors is appointed by the Realtor Association. And some random ass
I think Bob
agent
Hale
who
does a
doesn't know a
great
damn
job.
thing,
I think Bob Hale does a
sitting on my
great
board,
job.
right?
I think Bob Hale does a great job.
I think he would do a better job if the MLS and the association were completely divorced.
Yeah.
And they're about as close as things get, by the way. It's two separate corporations. They have two separate boards of directors.
But here's the problem is that we'll never get a straight answer from any of these guys because
I know.
While they're still there, it's like you'll never. I mean, even like at probably, we're 3 seats to the win in a lobby bar at 2 a.m. last call and saying, "Come on, man, tell me the truth. Do you really think blah blah blah?" We would never hear that.
I think the difference this year might be that the board might start to see things differently. In other words, the MLS CEO might always have believed, you know what, in order to really run the MLS great, we need to divorce the association, right? But they could never get that past the board, which was appointed by the association, right? This is the year I feel like maybe, because a lot of times, CMLS especially, they bring their like presidents, they bring their board chairs, right? They bring the volunteer leadership. Maybe if the volunteer leadership heard some of the shit that's going on, right, they might be like, we might need to divorce the association. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Again, that's just one example, right? There are a bunch of other examples. Like the whole, I still can't believe that 7 years later, I still think there are too many MLSs. They're too small and they're too poor. Like the definition that I gave back in 2016 was a Gartner research definition of what is a small, mid-size, and large company, right? In order to make mid-size, you have to do $1 billion a year in revenue. I don't think there's a single MLS in the country that does $1 billion in revenue. Do you?
Well, it depends on. I mean, they're a marketplace in this sense, and they're definitely
their own revenue.
Their own revenue. No,
their own revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
No, of course not. But I mean, they're certainly facilitating billions of dollars.
Of course.
There's certainly MLSs are facilitating billions of dollars of transactions happening.
Of course. Just about everyone is because it's real estate. I'm just saying, I don't think there's an MLS in the country that has its own revenues over $1 billion. 7 years later. Right. I mean, going from 850 to 500 MLSs.
But that's almost like it could be a business metric of how a revenue recognition metric. Right. So MLSs could definitely look at it this way. I mean, look at FMLS. Right. I mean, if it's a percentage of what's sold.
Yeah.
Well, you could basically we've facilitating the sale of $4 billion and we're charging 0.05. We're charging 500 basis points. Mm-hmm. And then, so
I think they're charging
now they've counted. Yeah. They're counting, that revenue. I mean, they're
charging like 25 basis points. I don't think FMLS does $1 billion in revenue.
Even if they're counting the houses sold as revenue.
But that's not revenue. Revenue is like literally checks coming in your door.
I mean, right? The game I'm playing. I mean, it's like GCI and I sold $1 billion worth of real estate, right?
I'm saying, even if it's nothing else, like, okay, I'm FMLS, because they were in the room in 2016. I hear this. I'm like, you know what? I want to be a mid-sized company. Let's go on this massive acquisition spree. Let's do whatever and grow our revenues to $1 billion. They couldn't do it. They didn't do it. Right. And I'm just saying, like, okay, so that's another example. The too poor thing is legit. I mean, I think people are like, well, MLS have all this money. And then we get the MLS PIN settlement. It's $3 million and that's all they could afford. And I was like, really? That's all the money they have?
That's a lot of money, but what? Okay. I still think that's a lot of money.
You think $3 million is a lot of money?
Yeah.
In the context of an MLS the size of PIN?
Yeah.
Really? Okay. All right. I mean, that was not a lot of money in my book, man. I mean, Remax paid $55 million.
Maybe I've been a vendor so long that these guys have been so poor mouth that I've really just hung on to that narrative.
Yeah.
I'm like the dog that's been hit so many times.
Yeah, maybe.
I flinch now at it. Like,
yeah.
Wait, I was told you had no money.
Yeah.
Right?
I was shocked.
3 million. Where'd you have 3 million hanging around? Right.
I was actually shocked. I'm like 3 million. That's like a fairly like a local mid-sized plumbing company. You know, they have that much money. Like, really?
I don't know any plumbers that got $3 million in the bank ready to give away.
Dude, I know a bunch here in Vegas. Like, they're big ass companies with, you know, like, so it was just shocking. Like, wow, like you guys really don't have much money, which then explains the whole, like, you know, why they nickel and dime the fucking vendors to death and constantly looking for non-dues revenues and constantly unable to innovate, constantly unable to do shit. I'm like, yeah, because you have no money, right? I thought you had a bunch of money, but apparently it's not the case, right?
And the sad part is they pride themselves on, we haven't raised dues in 25 years.
Right.
Jesus Christ.
Like, we're not for profit. I'm like, okay, too many of you and you're too poor and you can't do shit, you know? Yeah. Like, that hasn't, I mean, sure, we've made progress, but it's not like we went from 800 and whatever to 525, and now CRMLS is $1 billion a year company, and now they're making big moves, you know, like it's,
yeah, but I mean, there's you know, $1 billion, I mean, there's 100,000 agents. I mean, you divide that for the billion. How are you going to extract that kind of money from real estate agents? I mean, you're not.
I don't know. Zillow's doing 1.5 billion a quarter.
Yeah, and not making and not
revenue.
being that profitable doing it though.
I don't know. Their gross margins are like 85%, dude.
Yeah, what's net? That's what I was talking about.
Net, they can control the net. Right. I'm just saying, like, it's just odd, right? So this is, again, have been going on for years and years and years, right? I guess I'm wondering, is this year where things really change, where the people in that room cut together and go, it's time, we need to make changes. Like, imagine if CMLS itself, the organization, were to release a statement like, we need to divorce the NAR and the Realtor Association.
NAR,
could you see that happening?
Association. I don't know why CMLS would tell associations to do with NAR, but
no, CMLS would tell the MLSs. Right, CMLS is the trade organization for the MLS members. They could be like, we now believe that we should be separate from.
Right. Well, I mean, it would be more like, hey, everybody, Rob Hahn believes that there should be divorce between the MLS and associations, and we agree with Rob Hahn, and you should. Right? Because I mean, you're the one saying that. I don't read anywhere else really.
It'll probably be we need to appoint a committee to investigate this for the next 3 years. I don't know, man. I'm just curious. Like, okay, so that's on that side. Do you think the technology has changed significantly in the last 7 years?
No. I think that is going to change. I just got some news today of some stuff that I think is really going to be interesting with, and I you know, I hate even saying these two letters, AI. I think is going to be changing a lot coming up. I've just seen some previews of and heard about some previews of stuff. So I'll say that. But you know, I think fundamentally right now though, I think what we have that's a headwind to this kind of like change you'd like to see and that I'd like to see is, and there's a palpable like, male, you know, I think especially in the leadership of MLSs, it's just like, what's next? These lawsuits, you know, what's going on to the main mothership organization, right? Mm-hmm. There's just so much shit going on. It's like, you can't focus on until some of this shit is resolved. Mm-hmm. I think it's hard to see the forest from the trees here of going forward until, I don't think anybody wants to do anything in regards to compensation too much until we hear about what happens with the lawsuits. Sure. As far as like, you know, should we look into divorcing from, you know, or these kind of things that you're talking about? I mean, that shit might just be blown up anyway. It might happen for us, for Christ's sake, right? So I just, I don't want to say it's a wait and see, but it's like, I also get the feeling of like, what other shoe is going to drop here? I mean, it seems like there's some, and I don't want to get into this, but some memo that drops every week to make things, even worse.
Yeah.
And it just keeps coming and coming and coming. And I got to believe if I'm running a significant size MLS, it's just like, it's got to be draining right now. And we need to kind of get over that before I think we can see, some real change. But I think the nature of how this stuff is going to shake out is that it's going to like, whether, you like this to happen or not, it's going to force some change. So I think in the end, it'll be a good thing, but I still think we have a little bit of ways to go before those things can start, these initiatives can start happening.
Okay. So what that says to me is, and I think you're probably right, man. I mean, it's basically not a whole lot's going to change. Because what you've laid out is the case for reactive. Like the MLS and the people who govern MLS are fundamentally reactive. And you're right. They're saying, oh my God, this and that and this, what else is going to happen? I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. So we're going to hold off. We'll see what happens and then we'll react to it. Right? Versus being proactive, saying, hey, you know what? The environment's chaotic, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to proactively go out and do X, Y, and Z. We're going to proactively create change. We're going to proactively shift because this is what we believe. Like, that's just not a thing.
There has been, and we already talked about some of the things that have. I mean, Bright MLS, CRMLS, Redfin, some other people have put things out there to like proactively. We're going to put buyer's compensation on the website.
That was reactive, dude. That was after the DOJ lawsuit. No one did that proactively.
Yeah, no, right? I mean, I'm trying to find some ways to make your argument, but
you're the defender of the
faith. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I just don't think that that's a negative thing. I think that's just the way things happen. Is that, I mean, people don't want to change, and like this has been a narrative of like you and I on these podcasts for a long time. You're talking about always pushing the envelope, making radical change, from your point of view of what things happen. And then you also talk about the outcomes you think are going to happen, these second order consequences or third order consequences. And I'm always the guy that comes back and I want to say this word and you're going to nod your head. Inertia. The inertia is so powerful in this industry.
Sure.
That it's so hard, of anything to really make meaningful change because it just keeps rolling. Right. And I think that's the fundamental premise here that we're talking about. You talk about, widespread significant change and what ends up happening and why I'm not that I think it's the right thing, but just looking past it, history is the inertia so strong in the ways that we either rumble over it or we find ways to like twist it into the way we're doing things. And I think that's what's going to happen with this buyer's compensation thing. We're just going to figure out how to make it work within a system and just roll on, baby. Mm-hmm. And we'll see what happens.
Okay. So it's just coming down to this thing. Like, here's kind of where I'm realizing. And if I were going to see MLS, which I'm not, but if I were, I think it's interesting. Like the tagline this year is championing MLS.
Yeah.
But there's a huge element of that feels defensive, right? Like, how do we defend the MLS value proposition? How do we defend? And I think one thing I can't say is
defend the MLS. I thought championing the MLS.
It's championing. I'm saying though,
okay.
Like we're going to champion this cause. Like, we're going to champion this person. Like, there's a sense of it for me that it's defensive. Like, we're going to try and defend the MLS against all these attacks. Right? So I would submit to you that if I were in, it's like a topic of conversation should be, why are we so reactive? And you're right. Maybe it's just inertia. It's been so strong and things have been so good. So we don't need to be proactive. But the entire MLS and associated world is just so reactive. Right? And I think that's something maybe that people in that room should think about. Why are you so reactive? Why can't you be more proactive? And you're an entrepreneur, you're a startup guy. It's not like you said, you know what, I'm gonna go create CMA, like online CMAs, because I'm reacting to some crisis. Like you saw an opportunity, said, let's go make shit happen. Right. And I do think that as a general rule, the MLS industry is lacking some of that. Let's go make shit happen. Mindset and mentality. And probably a huge part of it is because of governance.
Yeah.
But it's just a general statement, right?
Sure. Well, let's push back a little bit on that, right?
Sure.
I mean, and again, you could say this is reactive because something else happens, but I don't know if that's a negative thing, right? Because at least they're doing something, right? So we have, I mean, I was just on a webinar yesterday where CRMLS has announced kind of a different division called RE Core, and they're now actively selling and promoting products to other MLSs that they've built internally, right?
Sure.
I think MLS Aligned, right? They have their Aligned showing products that they've been deploying themselves within their. It's only there's only a few MLSs that belong to MLS Aligned, but they've been deploying that pretty successfully. So they have their own. They can kind of control their own destiny, and they're MLS owned. Now, yes, you could actually argue that this is a reactive thing because they saw like a key vendor like Showing Time got bought by somebody that at the time, or I don't want to say they didn't like that outcome, right? They wish that outcome was something else, right? So they put it on themselves. Okay, we're going to do something, right? Again, I just push it. So I think there's some changes happening, and there is some proactive things. Now, whether the origin that was from a reactive thing, okay, but I think there's ways to react. There's you can cower, you can do nothing and like just hope it goes away, right? That's a way of reacting. You could like impose rules and regulations and more like that, or you could kind of take control of it in your own hands. And I think that's a good way that's a proactive way of doing things, right? Even though it may be coming from an origin of reactive purpose.
Sure. And this may shock you, but I sort of agree with you. I do think that things like MLS Aligned is proactive. Sure, it might be reacting to like an environment shift, but at least those MLS got together and said, hey, you know what? We should go make some shit happen. Right. CRMLS, I actually do think that's more proactive than it is reactive. It's again, it's just, let's go make shit happen.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to, oh, shit's happening. How do we deal with this? How do we defend? How do we keep things the same? I'm like, that's the mindset shift, maybe.
Yeah.
So I would be fascinated to see if coming out of, because again, this is going to air after CMLS is over, right? Coming out of this event, whether you or Sonny or some of my other friends and colleagues in the industry detect like, hey man, we've shifted. Like we're now going to be proactive about a bunch of things, right? Whatever that is, whether that's like even M&A, like just trying to consolidate, that's about as proactive, I think, as we could say that MLS have gotten, but it gets just bogged down and, like over 7 years, you went from 800 to 525. Congratulations, I guess. So another 7 years will be a 300 and it'll still be, 250 too many. And then another 7 years, it's like,
yeah, I get you.
By that time, AI will have taken over and like it'll be interesting to see, it'll be interesting to see. All right. Let's leave it there. You want to give I know you do your industry update thing. Any previews? Because this is me after you're done, right?
So I have actually, I'm bringing this up. I have a notes file. I'm looking now, and it says jokes for industry update. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6, and I think they're bangers.
Awesome.
I think they're bangers. I really think they're really good.
Make sure they record that session because I think we should play it at the beginning of our podcast next week.
Well, I mean, I have some previous ones that are on my YouTube channel. If somebody wants to Google some of the old ones I've done there, but
what is the address of this YouTube channel? We should probably put it into the show notes.
Yeah, I'll let Austin know to kind of do that. So,
all right. Well,
I'm going to miss you next week, man. That's a bummer. I guess I'll be there with Sonny will be there. But,
that's right. You get the better Han. So get the prettier, nicer, more beloved Han. So enjoy. And have a good time. And we will chat again next week.
Can't wait to hear about your meetings next week. So, and we'll have a lot to talk about, hopefully. Yeah.
That's right. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. And let me sign off by saying, be proactive, yo. Go make shit happen. All right. Later.
Listen, content is everything. Two Brothers Creative makes it look easy. Right now, business owners really only have two options. The first option is hire a big firm. Now, this big firm's going to come in, make you think that they invented all the algorithms, and start charging you thousands of dollars every month. You don't want to do that. Second option is to do it yourself. Well, that means you got to learn SEO, SEM, copywriting, marketing techniques on the web. You should be really focusing on your own product. But now there's a third option. It's called Content in a Box. Give Two Brothers Creative 30 minutes a week and they'll handle everything. Plus, they'll show you how to bring it in-house later on. They'll rebuild your marketing foundation and give you tools and techniques and a new marketing playbook that'll actually produce real results and help you grow your business. Two Brothers Creative will give you the confidence and know-how to tell the SEOs and SEMs and all those other acronyms to get fucked. You're in control now. Get started today at thecontentbox.com.